Well, hi there. Thank you all for coming. I want to thank Kelly for setting this up and La Madeleine for giving us a nice place to do this and some nice food to go along with that. I also want to thank Raquel Chapa, who does so much work in getting the VideoFest together. So sort of broad strokes for anybody who's kind of new to this, which may be nobody, but I'll sort of mention anyway. 2 years ago, we decided that instead of doing like 150 films in 6 or 7 days, that we would break up the festival into two discrete pieces, actually three, if you count the Dallas Medianale, which will be this summer at the McKinney Avenue Contemporary and Latino Cultural Center, and boy, is that going to be awesome. Had some meetings about that this week, and we have some amazing things planned for that. So in October, you may remember that we had DocuFest, which is our festival of documentary films, which was really wonderful, and I had a great time, and went really well. And then, so in February 7th, we have our alternative fictions, or AltFictions, depending on how alt you want to be. And so the idea here is to show narrative work that could be either for television or for film. We're just trying to think about how we deal with storytelling in the digital world in different kinds of ways. So this year, last year, which was the first year we did alternative fictions, we really spent a lot of time on the intersection of television and film, because there was a lot of interesting work, particularly being done in Dallas and by Texans for television. This year we sort of have a bunch of different strands that I think are really important, and then I'll sort of briefly mention these, and then I'll kind of go into them in a little more detail. We really have a very Dallas-centric festival this year. There's a lot of local work that I thought was really important to be shown and important to be highlighted. So a lot of our primetime slots are going to show Dallas-based films, and I think that's really kind of important. And they're all very different. They all use different methodologies, different approaches to storytelling, and they're all really great. I mean, it's not like I am compromising my artistic integrity to show local work. These are all what I think are really great. We also have a few more short blocks than we otherwise might have, because I saw that there were some really good short films. We also, we used to end the program with something we called the Texas Show, which is a compilation of work from Texas film and video makers. But we decided, instead of doing that, to integrate the Dallas and Texas-based shorts within the two major compilations we have. And then we also have this compilation that Alfred Cervantes does from Houston, which is another compilation of Texas shorts. So we just felt that there was no reason to do two of them. So we sort of preserve that one and then integrate the work into two different places. So the other sort of interesting strand that we have here is we have some, I think, very good work by women. And there's been a lot of discussion about women programming and getting more women films. I was just at the Art House Convergence and Film Festival Alliance Conference, and there was a lot of talk that people are having a goal of having 50-50 by 2020, meaning 50% work by women by 2020. I hope we can get there. It's hard, but we're working on it. So this year we are trying to address some of these issues. And one of the issues we have, and I can speak about this from true personal experience. As a teacher in film, I have a list that I give my students. It was initially 100 films that all film students should see. Then it was 150 films that all film students should see. Now it's 200 films that all film. As we get more faculty and we get more input, we bring more things in there. And it's very clear that women are not as equally represented in those lists. And that's a real problem. And the problem is, from me, that I grew up in an era where that work was relatively unseen. That's where in my undergraduate and graduate studies, I studied international films, documentary films. I studied a lot of films, but not a lot of women's films. So this year is somewhat of a correction for me as well as for the audience. So in order to sort of deal with these issues, there are two very significant, I think, pieces. One is there's a compilation of short films called Pioneers. Is that what the Pioneers? First Women Filmmakers. So this is a series that Kino Lorber put together, and it's like 8 hours of programming, and being that we only have like 16 slots, we can't do 18 hours of programming. But this is a series of shorts that really highlight the work of early women filmmakers who have not been written into the history of film. So that was my intent in putting that in there. The other point is there's a restoration of Hitchhiker, the Ida Lupino film, and Ida Lupino is somebody who should be on all of these lists and has somewhat been ignored. So these two things to me are corrective measures to bring women back into the body of work, okay? And then of the Dallas filmmakers who have work, we have Jenny and Joe, who we'll be talking to later, who are going to have a work in progress, very far down the road work in progress screening that we are incredibly happy. Jenny's work we've shown at our festival before. She's, you know, a wonderfully talented filmmaker, and to be able to share this in the context of that other work is really very important to me. So that's the sort of context for which we sort of go through the schedule. Okay?
Yeah.
Cool. Okay, so let me sort of run through this quickly and give you kind of some things that I think are really important. The opening night film at 7 o'clock is this incredibly good. I also, for those of you who don't know, I program a Jewish film series called 3 Stars Cinema. It's a monthly series of Jewish films. So this is a kind of joint program with that. And this is a very big series that's going on in Israel right now. We're showing the first 2 episodes of this, and it imagines a world in which Israel is divided. Can you imagine a divided country? Never heard of that. Between the religious Jews and the secular Jews. And there's this wall between the 2 parts. Imagine that. So it is very much like a reflection of issues we have here about it's sort of a divided world. And what happens in the story is early on there's a guy whose job it is to take people who have died in the secular side, but family wants them to be buried in the religious part. He drives the body over. So he's got this truck, and he gets these bodies, and then he brings some pork and books that are banned and all kinds of other counterbands. So you see this smuggler going between the 2 sides and setting this off. And so that's a kind of really interesting thing. But then there's this controversy because this nurse had killed a baby by mistake and switched that killed baby with a religious person's baby. So this religious person thought that her baby died. And then this person says, no, your child is still alive. She's living in the secular part. So there's this incredible battle over which side should get this kid. So all of these issues that are here in the United States and here in Israel are in this incredibly great show. It's really beautifully acted. All of the great Israeli actors are in this. And so we are showing the first 2 episodes. I think there are 6 episodes in the series. In September, the Jewish Film Festival will show the 3-hour and 15-minute version of the whole thing.
Wow.
We're not doing that. But they are, which is really great. And seeing the whole thing really gives you a sense of an ending. And what we'll do at that point when the film comes to an end, I will tell, since I've seen the rest of it, what happens, so you know, being that it's not going to be easy for everybody to see what's going on. So that's the opening night film. Then right after that, we have Richard's film, A Ship of Human Skin. Richard Bailey has been making films in this area for a long time. And a lot of some of his work is somewhat experimental, and he's getting more into narrative work. And as far as I'm concerned, this is his best film yet, where he's really worked with actors and gotten performances that I think are at a level that's different than the work that he's done before. So that's opening night. Friday night is very special to me emotionally. So many of you probably, I don't think any of you are old enough to remember a guy named Ken Harrison who died just recently. Ken was very important to the Dallas film community, particularly in the 80s. He worked at Channel 13 on the newsroom program, and he did a lot of films. We showed a documentary of his a few years ago that was restored called Jackalope, which was a documentary about all these interesting artists. It was shot in 16, of course. He also directed some episodes of Wishbone, the TV show. He did 2 films of Horton Foote's material, 1918, and Valentine, I forgot the name of the other one. But he also did some incredibly powerful short film, Hannah and the Ghost Dog, and a few others. So I have been working with some archivists to restore some of this work, and so we're going to see the whole of one of these shorts and some clips of the others. His work is truly inspirational, and he it's really kind of a heart and soul of what was the Dallas film community back in those early 80s, and somebody that everybody really respected. And anyway, so we're doing a tribute to him, which is really good. I just finished editing it last night, and I think it's something you'll all enjoy. After that, we're showing David Byrne's True Stories. I don't know how many of you ever seen that, but True Stories was shot in Dallas in the 80s. And Dallas in the 80s was kind of this odd place. It was like, Star Club, and there was all this club culture, and people were coming from New York. And this film kind of shows Dallas at this moment and shows what people coming from New York perceive Dallas to be. And David Byrne is kind of driving around, sort of exploring the sense of the world. And there are a whole bunch of really odd characters who are kind of hip and trendy people in Dallas, and we're trying to bring as many of those people to the screening as possible. So this kind of gives us a sense, and kind of paired with the Ken Harrison thing, it's really kind of a nice evening. It's sort of thinking about where we are in this festival that has a kind of Dallas-centric sense to it, back and forward. Okay, on to Saturday. Saturday, we start with the Big D Mobile Festival, a festival of all work shot by mobile devices. And when we started doing this, maybe 5 years ago, is that about right? It's kind of a nice novelty. It was kind of different. What's really interesting when you look at the work now is, it's not special in that it's shot with a phone. It's like you look at this and say, so? Because the phones now shoot in 4K. There's software that makes it look really good. There are ways to get good sound in it. And so, but there still is a place to highlight those. And just to sort of take a step back, through the history of our festival, we have often gone and shown films done with a certain technology. We had a program called the Amiga Show, which was worked on an Amiga, and Brandon Olderberg had a piece that was shown there.
Wow.
A long time ago, and Brandon's done very well for himself, but that was one of the first times he had a public exhibition of his work. And over the years, we've shown, let's all sort of feed into where we're going later, might as well hit this now. In 1988, we showed a program about this new technology called virtual reality. So we brought in this guy named Scott Fisher from NASA, and at that time it was goggles and gloves. And part of the reason NASA wasn't interested in this, so they could have things outside the capsule, so they didn't have to have people out there to see what was going on. And really the early work in virtual reality was done by Atari and NASA. Hey, there's Ryan. So Brian works at Flight School Studios, and I have to say, as kind of like the proud sort of father-like character, Ryan is a former student of mine, and did very good work when he was a student. But Ryan's been working there, producing some work in virtual reality. So we have, the Dallas-centric part of the festival continuing. This is the work that's being done in a studio in Dallas that I think is really very powerful. So there's a work that he did for a series called VR for Good, which is about testicles, and has this massive balloon that's how big?
100 foot tall.
100-foot testicle balloon, which you get to experience virtually. Yes. But the series of VR for Good, and they're meant for the Oculus, we're showing 3 of these pieces, and each of them, it's not just that it's for a social good, but they're all done incredibly well. One of them takes place in a prison, and another one tracks somebody who was a former member of a right-wing hate group. But it takes what VR does and lets us into a space where we can explore it and kind of see what's going on. So we have the sort of 2 kinds of flavors of the VR AR material. There's the VR for Good pieces, which there are, I think, 3. And one of them is made by Ryan. And then there's an AR piece that we have from Flight School and a VR piece that we have from Flight School. The other Flight School pieces are both animated pieces, and what's interesting in both of them, aside from the really both incredibly good experiences, that both of them are innovative in the way they use interface design. So in these sort of environments, a lot of it is like how you go from screen to screen and story to story. So on one piece, you look at this character in their eye, and when you lock eyes with the character, you go into another screen. So it's this really fascinating way of doing it. And then on this AR piece that works with your phone, and in the table that you're on, creates these characters that come up and see you. The interface is done by you talking to the phone. Like the character talks to you, and then there's text, and you read it, and when you read that, you go on to the next thing. So in both cases, the interface design is really kind of interesting way to bring in interactive storytelling. And so those are the pieces, and they will be there on Saturday from 2 to 5, right, at the Angelica. Okay?
There's 4 VR for Good pieces.
Oh, 4 of them, okay.
So,
There's yours and the 3 others. The Walk the Line.
Meeting a monster, and then we have...
Oh, the music video.
Use Your Imagination.
Which is I'm sorry, I forgot about that one.
Well, he'll go into all of that.
But it's a music video made by and with kids that are on the spectrum. And you may think, okay, well that'll be weird, but it's really good. It's like the song is good, the performance is good, the idea is good. It kind of really works nicely. It's kind of really beautiful. All right, let me just hit up some other highlights. The short film blocks I am really, really, really very proud of, and I think they're really great. We have over the last few years had this series by a filmmaker and editor from Los Angeles named Alan Holtzman. And Alan went to the AFI Film School a long time ago, and they had these really cool lectures by famous filmmakers that they recorded these on like 1-inch video, and the AFI was going to throw them in the trash, and he took them all, preserved them, and has used that material to create these programs. And we're one of the few places that shows these programs. And they've been really good. The Truffaut, what are the other ones we had? They were all really...
Frank Capra.
The Frank Capra one is amazing. What's that? Yeah. And so this is the last one he has. And it's about David Lean. And what's interesting about this one is that this was before they were videotaping it, so all he has is audio tape. But because Alan is such a great editor and he has the David Lean material is really, quite important, this piece is very strong and it's really good. And so these series, really this is the only place where you can see them.
And Alan also said that he's actually in the class with David Lean.
Oh,
Yeah. Pretty cool.
that I did not know. Okay, so then also Saturday we have Jenny's film, which she's going to talk about, which is, we're very, very excited about. And Life and Nothing More is a film from a couple years ago, but it has not been shown here. And it is a film that sort of describes an African-American experience of a mother trying to get by, trying to bring up her kids and struggling. And, of course, the kid has a problem with the police and things go badly. But it's a really beautiful study of what life is like and truly very powerfully and done. Anyway, I'm glad that we found it and are wanting to show it. What else do we have? Sunday. Sunday we start off with the Houston Film Commission's program of Texas Filmmaker Showcase. The Hitchhiker, which I talked about, and how many of you have seen The Hitchhiker? It's a lot of fun. It's a good ride, and so it's seen on the big screen with good picture and good sound. It'll be great. It'll be quite an experience. And then we have a couple other short blocks which have some really, really good films in them that I like immensely. Tucked is this incredible, how do I describe Tucked? What I really should do is have these trailers to show you. And I can make these trailers available for you. I think actually on the pre-Kindle site there are trailers for most of these that are there.
And I can send those to you as well if you, and as well as links to some of these films. So we don't have all of them, but most of them.
But I think Life and Nothing More and Tucked are my descriptions of them are not going to be as good as seeing the trailer. Tucked is about this sort of elderly drag queen who's also kind of a stand-up comic drag queen who has a sort of relationship with this younger drag queen. It's both funny and heartwarming and sad and funny at the same time and powerful. Very beautifully directed and a very enjoyable film. Donovan is another locally produced film, and it's about a guy with bipolar disorder and trying to deal with, being a good father. It's like fatherhood and, family life are kind of a big deal, and mental health. Again, a local film, but very powerful and, kind of important to do.
And he has bipolar.
What's that?
The director is bipolar. He's not very responsible.
And then there's Long Day's Journey into Night. So this is a film that is like the #1 film in China for a while. It's kind of a big deal, and it starts in 2D for about an hour and then goes into 3D in this very long tracking 3D shot. It has nothing to do with the play Long Day's Journey into Night at all, but let me just say this will be one of those unique cinema experiences in Dallas. So, these programs we're doing are shortish, meaning only one theater at a time, and I think I've covered most of what we have, so I can answer questions if you have them. Come on, somebody's got a question. How can you keep being so good looking at 65 years old? I don't know. I just don't know. Yes.
More of a statement, but I really like that goal of 50-50 by 2020. I think that's huge.
Well, you know, we are, let me talk about that for a moment, because when we started our festival in 1987, there was only the USA Film Festival around. So it was really incumbent upon us to program gay and lesbian programs, women's programs, African American programs, Latino programs, anything that was outside of the area. We were, you know, anime. We played anime early on. We did so many things because there was nobody else. Now, with a really good women's film festival, most of the really good women's work kind of moves in that direction, right? The gay and lesbian work, well, we don't have a gay and lesbian festival in Dallas, but there is one in Fort Worth. The Latino work, there's a great Latino festival. And there's also a great African American festival in Denton. So my point is, it's a little harder for us to do that because we tend to work with all of them. But I think you can see that it's part of our DNA that diversity in all kind of ways is important to us. Not just about women's work, although we have a very specific, we do have a Cuban film here as well. I mean, so we're really try to, with a small amount of films, hit a really diverse agenda, as well as really promoting the work of Dallas filmmakers.
For women, it's easier for other ethnicity if you're inclusive in a correction.
Yeah. So so anyway, that it's clearly a goal, and I think one of the other things we need to do is, when we send out our call for entries, try to target areas where we get more women's work in, because the more things we get from entries, the more we're hitting sort of the grassroots makers, as opposed to getting things from distributors, which are already been showing someplace. So that's, I think, where we can kind of do our homework to get us there. But this is who we are and what we try to do. Any other questions? I can't have answered all your questions. Don't you want to see all these things?
I definitely want to see everything. If there's anything on Sunday that has a screener, I'd like to see it. I will be in Chicago. So.
Oh, and the thing is that we do have a screener for Long Day's Journey, but to see it only in 2D is not going to be
really good. No, sadly, but I've got a commitment.
Yeah.
So somebody contacted me, and I have to see that one.
Yeah.
Just for clarification, you mentioned something about Ghost Dog in relation to Ken Harrison.
Yeah.
Is that the Forrest Whitaker movie you're talking about?
Is that the what?
The Forrest Whitaker movie?
No. This is Hannah. The film is called Hannah and the Ghost Dog.
Okay, all right.
And it features performance by Vicky Washington, who is a very well-known Dallas actress, who I think teaches at Booker T. This was when she was much younger. It's a beautiful film. And it's also has very little lip sync in it. So it's this short film that is mostly beautiful visual storytelling. Ken had this, he grew up in a small town in Texas, so he has kind of true Texas thinking, yet he lived in Dallas for long enough, so he has a kind of mix of the sort of country and urban life, and that aesthetic mixes in his work. He there's a lot of it about small town Texas, but then the films about the art world, like Jackalope, really sort of capture what Texas artists are and how they're different from others. In this one scene that we're showing, Bob Wade, I don't know if you know Bob Wade, is a very famous Texas artist, is going to this guy to try to buy some dead armadillos to get stuffed. And it's very creepy, going into the freezer and picking which armadillo he wants for this. We're lucky to have the work restored. And then he made this film, after he did the films for Horton Foote, he made this film called Ninth Life, which was sort of about the Deep Ellum arts community, and it's a very kind of urban look at art, which is different from the Jackalope, which was sort of a country look at Texas art. But anyway, his work is kind of, he was a real, poet of cinema, a great screenwriter, and taught at UNT and at UT Arlington, and somebody I really admire and respected. And so, it's up to us as the VideoFest to honor the people who have been here in the past, because that's part of what we do.
So Bart, do you want to talk about what else is coming up in 2019? Because this is kind of the end of the AltFictions is the end of the 31st.
Well, sort of.
Season.
Except we have the Medianale in the summer.
Oh, okay, okay.
And that's all this video art, which will be in the McKinney Avenue Contemporary, in the Cedars, and then we have these live performance things that will be at the Latino Cultural Center. We're still don't have dates set yet for the 24-hour video race, but we are making major changes in how we present that. The North Texas University Film Festival, which is a celebration of work, the best work from UNT, SMU, and UT Arlington. And right now we're negotiating whether it'll be the last Tuesday in February or the first Tuesday in March. But it'll be one of those 2 days. Mm-hmm. And hopefully today I will be able to get my partners in that to figure out which one of those days we're going to do. What else? That's all. I mean, on a personal note, I've been working on this incredibly cool video series that I'm really proud of, and I've somewhat been absent. Poor Raquel has been trying to help get this thing together, and I've been kind of MIA working on this project. So we're a little late on a few things, and it's all my fault. So
Tell us about Cuba.
What?
Tell us about Cuba and that film festival.
Oh, that's a whole other thing. So I took my students to the Havana Film Festival in December. So it's like as soon as the semester was over, we went down. And the Havana Film Festival is really quite special because it is the festival of Latin America. So there were filmmakers from all over Latin America, Argentina, El Salvador, I mean, just like, and it runs in theaters all over the place. We went to see a lot of films. We interviewed a lot of filmmakers. We had a lot of good Cuban film. I think we drank a little too much rum. Well, those of us who were above age.
Right.
The other ones, I didn't see anything. We also went to this incredibly great nightclub / performance art space that was absolutely magnificent and inspiring. And it's just really wonderful to be in another festival and see it through the eyes of my students encountering this community, which I thought worked really beautifully. So it was great.
You know, bring more Cuban films to Dallas?
Well, we have one Cuban film here, which is Miguel's film, which is called Nadie. And Miguel is a filmmaker. Miguel makes these films. We've shown another one of his films a few years ago. He lives rent-free in Cuba because he's an artist.
Wow.
But because his films are not supportive of Castro, his films can't be shown in Cuba. So he was supposed to have a screening of this film, the one we're showing, in like his friend's house, and somehow the cops found out about it and closed it down. But they will support him to go to MoMA, where this film has shown,
Wow.
and other places outside the United States. They have no problem having anti-Fidel messaging outside of Cuba, but inside of Cuba, that's problematic. And what Miguel does is he goes on a tour like once a year and shows his films in the United States, takes all the screening fees, and lives on that for the rest of the year. So when last time he was at our festival, he like would spend as little money as possible because he needs that money back home, and it's really crazy. The internet down there, they have a separate internet for tourists and for locals, and locals, they block a lot of things, and it's hard to get like things in and out over the internet. But there's one embassy that lets artists go there on like the first Monday of the month. So,
Wow.
so when he needs to get things out, he does that. But the thing about his films is that because he like lives rent free, there's no pressure. He handcrafts all of the images. He like builds his own like special effects, and they're very, very beautifully put together. They're very expressive. They're very dense and very beautiful, and they're very aestheticized, but they're very special. And so he doesn't make them that often because he's paid so long to make them, but when he does, it's a real treat.
Will you go over the details for the festival?
Details, Thursday through Sunday. Mostly we started at 7 Thursday night, Friday night. Saturday and Sunday we start at noon and go till we're over. What else?
And Angelica.
And at the Angelica, the VR/AR material will be on Saturday from 2 to 5. So please show up for that. The VR/AR material is free. I have no idea how much passes tickets are, so Raquel can tell you. I joyfully don't know these things. So like, tell all your friends to come. I'm very proud of what we have this year, and I think we have a great film festival community in Dallas. Each of us does something that's unique and different, and I think as we have evolved in response to what other people do, I think we found different niches that we can do well, and I think that we bring something different. What else can I tell you? My students always have questions.
What's the meaning of life?
It's a Monty Python film. They're very good one.